everyone. Welcome back to the CCO Follow podcast. This is our third week talking about stewardship. And honestly, I'm really excited for this one because we're going to be talking about stewarding over our finances. I think it's a very big topic, and we're not going to cover everything in this episode, but I hope that we can kind of cover those basics, I guess, of stewarding finances. And so we're working our way through the Chase family, getting them on the podcast. Yeah. Today we have Bill Chase with us, and Brendan, you're next, so good luck. Look forward to that. But Bill is a very knowledgeable guy about finances, and he stewards over them very well, I would say. And maybe he hasn't his whole life. I don't know. We're going to hear kind of part of his story. But Bill, just to start out, when we talk about stewardship, when you think about stewardship, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Stewardship is taking care of somebody else's stuff, being accountable to take care of somebody else's stuff. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be anything. Yeah, that's the key of stewardship, definitely. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Financial stewardship. What's the most important thing that you think people should know? Well, the most important thing is really foundational, and it is that everything belongs to God and nothing belongs to you. So you have ownership over zero.
Nothing.
Makes it easy to keep track of.
Well, yeah, maybe not. If you're a steward, then while you don't own it,
they have all the other stuff.
You're taking care of it for God, and God owns everything.
Yeah.
He made everything.
Yeah.
So he owns everything. He's just letting us use it, and steward it for his purposes.
Yeah. Well, with regards to finances in particular, I don't know, Travis, I'm curious for you because, I would say you're the classic millennial, right?
Okay, sure.
And when did you start to think about stewardship in the finance point of view?
Oh, see, that's where I'm definitely not a classical millennial.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, early on I was always, into numbers and, keeping track of things and stuff like that. And I think I was 11, maybe 10, where I'd already been given a wallet and I kept some money in there, but I was like, I want to buy my own. Yeah. And so I took all 15 of my dollars and bought a wallet and put what left over, $30, whatever I had in it. And that's when I opened a Microsoft Money account on my dad's computer and started tracking my $3.
Wow, and
goodness. So I was way into tracking and stuff like that. And accounting when I was in college was honestly pretty dirt easy. So much where my mom was like, there's no way that they're teaching you right accounting because it was really hard for her.
Yeah.
And so she's going through my book and being like, wait, so you learned this? I'm like, yeah. She's like, it was easy. I'm like, yeah. She was not happy. But so even in high school, I made my own spreadsheet because I stopped liking Microsoft Money. I made my own spreadsheet to keep track of money, and I actually made a copy for Alicia when we were dating and helped her start keeping track of her finances. So that's always been just kind of a natural thing for me.
Nice. But what about you? I mean, well, you can just tell us kind of what you do and why we have you on here talking about finances.
Well, I have worked in accounting for my entire career. In fact, I'm getting ready to get rid of that career. Retire. That's what I'm going to do.
Nice.
But I've done it for state government for about 38 and a half years.
Wow.
And so don't hold that against me. But it's been great. And money's important. Money's important in everybody's life. Whether you think you own it or whether you realize that God owns it or whether it belongs to the people of the state of Washington and you're using it for the state's purposes.
Or if you realize it owns you.
Well, that's the thing because, what's important about financial stewardship is that everything belongs to God. I've said that already, but money is a really big thing in our lives. Yeah. It's like you can't really do anything without it.
Yeah.
The love of money is the root of all evil. So somewhere in there, we need to fit and use God's money for God's purposes.
Yeah.
without getting attached to it ourselves.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of curious about too, is because I think in today's culture, I think we're becoming more and more aware, even just the world, of how money really is important, and the way that our system is set up is it kind of drives our, I guess you could say, it kind of drives the system itself. It's part of our economy, and we're seeing, especially today's day and age, at least in the United States, the talk of money is high on everybody's list right now because all this crazy stuff happening. And so I think there is a great movement, I guess you could say, of educating yourself in finances and all these different things. But my question, I guess, to you guys is, where's the line of like practicality of financial, what's the term I'm looking for? Not stewardship, but just the world would see it as just good financial management. Yes, thank you. Versus stewarding and where, as the Christian, do we kind of draw the line of what we do and why we do it? And I don't know, just kind of putting that out there for you guys. But yeah, I guess the question, to restate it, would be, what is the difference between good financial management and good stewardship of our finances, if any at all?
Well, it's interesting because I asked Travis just yesterday, what is the difference between stewardship and management? And really, what did you say, Travis?
I mean, basically, at least my understanding is that there's really no different. If there's going to be any difference, it would probably be connotative, not denotative. So like not where it's actually defined differently,
right,
but just we associate them differently.
Yeah.
And I associate the difference being stewardship being more personal and being like, I am going to personally take care of this situation and this thing that I am taking care of, where managing is like a more impersonal, I'm going to take care of this. So like you manage, maybe a whole group of people, but you're not like micromanager. You're just kind of like, but like stewardship is like, I am personally taking care of this thing, and it brings it more personal, more care is involved.
Yeah.
Instead of, it's less books on numbers, like or numbers on a page, and more like you're getting your hands dirty. You really care about this thing and taking care of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's more of a connotative thing than a denotative one. So I wouldn't.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like that's personally just how like the words vibe differently to me. I wouldn't say they probably define differently at all.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so then talking about financial stewardship, management, maybe in some aspect, where does someone start? Let's say I'm coming right out of college, getting a job for the first time. I want to be a good steward of what God's given me. What should I do? Where do we start?
Well, I think, first of all, you realize that everything belongs to God. That's the very first thing. Mm-hmm. He gave us all these things. And then focus your attention on what would God do with the money? How would God treat that money? Because it is His, and we're supposed to steward that in a way that would be pleasing to Him, that would further, His will. It's interesting because every once in a while you'll have a car break down, or one of the appliances breaks down, and you go, "Oh man, wow, okay, God, you supplied. It's not how I would have spent it." But he supplies our needs.
Yeah.
So if he brings along something to spend it on, who am I to say that wasn't something God had planned in the beginning? And how many lines down the road is that money that's being paid to fix an appliance blessing someone else?
Yeah, that's true. I never really thought of it that way, but being interconnected like that it's a good point, because oftentimes, at least in my young life, I've been able to identify where I haven't really spent my money in the best areas, and where God has kind of showed me, hey, there's something coming up. I gave you that money to prepare. I remember telling you, I forget what podcast it was on, but kind of talking about a situation where I got to learn from what God was doing with my finances.
Sure.
And it's interesting. Travis, for you, you have a large family now, and
Can we be considered large yet?
Oh,
Maybe
definitely.
not Calvary large.
How many?
Just
Cute little family.
yeah.
yeah.
But what is it like? I mean, coming from, you said you were kind of into it at a young age. How has that grown in your life of, because obviously one person going to two people, going to 3, 4, and 5, what is that like? What's the process look like in terms of like finances and where you are dedicating more emphasis, I guess, with your finances?
You dedicate more to food as
Yeah.
I'm not sure quite what you mean. I mean, obviously you increase certain budgets, like our auto insurance cost more expensive because we have more kids, but our food budget does. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, is like what areas cost more.
Well, I guess you could say, like, let's just say, and Bill, you can chime in on this too. Let's just say it's just me and my wife, and we make enough money where we have an excess based on our budget of just needs.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do with that money? Like, where, like you said, obviously ask God, pray for it, but what do I do with it? And do I save it? I'm trying to think, like, I hear the name Dave Ramsey a lot.
Yeah, it
and
brings chills to many people.
Yeah, and I think times do change, but I guess like practically, what should we do with our money with excess?
Gotcha. Well, so I guess the first thing is you have to really know where you're already spending stuff. And so I usually encourage people before they even start making big changes to be like, hey, start finding out where you're spending it, because most people have no idea where they're spending money. And so you figure out, where you have expenses and where you have income and how much is left over. You make sure that you are doing what would be considered like the baseline bare minimum of, tithing, of, making sure that you guys have your heart in the right place, where if you have a moment where you feel like God's saying, I want you to give to this person, that you are in a place where you can just obey. But then if you have excess, I mean, the Bible talks about saving, which, it's good to have an emergency fund like Dave Ramsey would talk about. It's good to have multiple months of savings. If you can start going that direction and start saving towards that direction, it's good to start saving for retirement. And it's also good to maybe even look and see where else can we be additionally generous, and taking that from a more strategic standpoint, like Paul talks in 1 Corinthians.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, Bill? Do you have anything to add on that?
I really can't disagree with anything Travis just said. You have to, you find out, well, like Travis says, you find out where your money's going if you don't know. If you do know, take a hard look at them, and is that where it should be going? Are those wise things to do? Tend to be very conservative, and I don't generally go around looking to spend my extra shekel on. And so if there's extra, it can sit in a pile at the bank and doesn't have to earn a lot of interest. It just needs to be available for whatever. So, and generosity, I think, is something that is often not thought of.
Yeah, definitely.
So there are people with needs out there. Some of them some of them you don't. But you also want to be wise with that. I have had experience with the people at the end of the off ramp, and do I give them a buck? Or do I, give them a candy bar? It's more likely a candy bar. Generally speaking, I don't give people money because they misuse it, and they should probably listen to the podcast. But if God tells me, and He has on occasion, someone say, "Hey, you got any money?" Well, if God tells me to do it, I've done it before, and I something that's cool about being obedient in that way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, there's people who have been, like, why would you give that person money that's going to be? It's like, well, God told me to. Like, do you want me to listen to you or God?
Yeah.
But I think also you mentioned like expenses. It made me remember of like, I think the other part with expenses is I usually encourage people to categorize them as fixed or variable expenses. So a fixed expense would be like your rent, electricity, stuff like that. That goes up and down a little bit, but it's not like you're suddenly going to have a large electricity bill because you stayed up late one night or something. Who knows? Yeah. And I think that also helps people see like, you know what, I need to find, a cheaper apartment, or you know what, I shouldn't be eating out so much and I should adjust my grocery budget and my, eating out budget. But then also when it comes to like you were saying like, oh, I don't like spending my extra shekel. I'd rather just save it if I, have an extra one. I think sometimes when we go in above and beyond of like, hey, I have a little bit extra money, what should I do with it? Like the classic Marie Kondo, but in reverse, where she's like, if it doesn't bring you joy, throw it away. Why even bring in your house to begin with if it's not like, really consider, do I want to buy this thing? Do I actually truly want to buy this thing? Like, what is its purpose? Like, am I going to get some extra joy from it? Is it going to add some value to my life? Is it going to add value to someone else's life? Why am I even considering doing this? And that can save you a lot of heartache of having to part with it maybe in 2 years when you do decluttering and you're like, wow, I spent money on that and now I'm just throwing it away because I didn't want it.
Yeah. Or when you buy that car you really want and then a month later you get rid of it because you realize that was dumb.
Yeah, like that.
I've done that.
But yeah, I mean, asking God and being like, is this what you really have for me right now?
Yeah, that's good. What are some pitfalls to someone maybe trying to steward well? What are some common pitfalls?
Well, when you own the money, then you can stress out about it.
Yeah.
If
That's good, yeah.
God says that He'll supply all our needs. So if I'm taking care of His money, He's taking care of me. So I shouldn't have to be stressed about that. But if we're trusting in ourselves rather than in God, that can give you stress, that can give you distractions that keep you from hearing what He wants to say.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. I think when we talk about the general categories of like time, treasures, talents, I think treasures reveal heart issues the most. Heart issues like that because it's so easily organizable. Like it's so I know some people is like, this is difficult for me personally, but in general, it's like you have income and you have expenses and it's extremely trackable, especially nowadays with like, a lot of people using cards instead of cash. It's very easy to find out where stuff went. And so the only step after that to steward well
is the heart.
Yep. Like it goes directly to it. It's not like time or talents where it can easily slip by because just things come up. Instead, it's like, okay, it's black and white, and it's very easy to get to that black and white moment where now all you're dealing with is just pure heart stuff, not the technical aspect. And so I think it reveals stuff like you were saying, Bill, of like anxiety and stuff like that. Who are you trusting? I think it reveals stuff like who really owns the money. And it's like, well, I just don't want to give. There's multiple times where I've done financial counseling with people, and we get to that point of counseling, and we're like, yeah, we see you're not giving and things like that. And it's like, well, yeah, and it's like, well, you have the money. You do have the money, and they're just like, well, it's just so hard. And it's like, hey, it's showing a heart issue, and it reveals so many things in our character and our hearts when in such a black and white thing like treasures.
Yeah, that's good. I think it was kind of in my life. I've never really. I can't say that I've ever really been the type of guy that's like, oh, I'm planning out my life to earn this much and I want to get to this point. And I know there's some people who are like that, but I never thought that, coming out of college, I'd ever be worried because I wasn't that guy. So I'm never going to be worried about money. I grew up in the church, oh, God will take care of me. But when it's tested, man, it was tough. The first real year of my adult life, realizing, when I'm sitting in my parents' house thinking, oh, that rent costs that much and I earn that much. These don't add up here. What's going on? I think it's really difficult, especially for young people who are kind of coming into it, to experience the reality of kind of the system that we live in. But what would you say to that young person? How would you encourage them in, it's going to be okay. Here's some practical things to do to help. But, what would your encouragement be to that person?
Well, if I were going to, first of all, have a little list, develop a budget. So that again is where am I spending my money, or where am I planning on spending my money? Eliminate debt, because debt will just chew you up.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So and with debt, so that brings on distraction, that brings on stress.
It brings on enslavement. I mean, the Bible says that the debtor is slave to the lender.
Yeah,
and it's like that borrower. There you go.
Yeah,
I was like, that's not right. Yeah, I mean, it is true. One of the blessings that we had early in our life was that we both got out of college without debt, and that gave us the freedom to go help start a church. It gave us the freedom to cut back on income so that we could focus our time on serving and different things like that. And we had enough financial stress, but I cannot imagine what life would have been like had we had that additional. Getting rid of debt is massive.
I think it really is hard for young people these days.
Especially when they're encouraged to get into debt.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
every
plenty
time
of people,
you turn around.
Yeah, I mean, not only college, but I know multiple people who are like, a car loan is an assumption, like complete assumption. Like you will have a car loan, like whether you like it or not. That's just the way life is, and it's like, whoa, what? Like it's a taught mindset in the world today that this is a presumed thing.
Well, and even more than that, unfortunately, that assumption is now becoming reality with the price of things going up. I mean, to find a car, like I remember I bought my first car, it was like $1,000, and it was not horrible. Like it was doable. Like it was my first car,
Sure, it ran.
Certain thing, and it ran. Now, I mean, I can't even imagine starting out as a high schooler or in college trying to find that kind of a car for under what you can afford is tough. So
I mean, the thing is that we continue to raise our standards as if the economy is going up, and that's just not the case. For years, Dave Ramsey, that's time number 2. We can't say his name another third time, but he was a big proponent for years of like, if you can't afford a car, then you can't afford a car, and that means you ride the bus. And he's like, the average person, get some stuff done while you ride the bus, read a book, do different things. He's like, if this is the season where you can't afford a car, simply don't afford a car. And, there's people all across the country who don't have cars. And, I mean, I think even a car being presumed, and it's like, oh, it's worthwhile to get in debt over it, and there are $2,000-$3,000 cars that are available. It's just you have to do more maintenance. You might have to learn how to do some of the maintenance yourself, and like it's not fun. I'm not saying it's easy or fun, but I think it's certainly a lot more doable than a lot of people give credit for.
Yeah, I think it's important also to be content with what you have.
Yeah.
The scripture says that godliness with contentment is great gain. So if we're not looking for the next bigger and better thing out there, if we can be content, that frees us up for the other items in our budget or forgiving.
Yeah, that's huge. I wish that I had known. I wouldn't have gone to college, to be honest. If I had known really what it meant to go to college and have to pay all this money and taking out student loans, and I really do. I think debt is really suffocating. Yeah. And that's my biggest encouragement. I coach high school students, and I just randomly bring it up. I say, hey guys, don't get into debt. Don't get in it, because I think it's really important.
They look at you funny though.
They do. They really do. But hopefully at least one of them goes, maybe I shouldn't get into debt. Maybe I shouldn't pull out that loan. But yeah, that's big. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is though, because you started this part of the conversation about like, what would you tell a younger person or someone maybe trying to explore this direction of stewarding finance as well, and maybe they're stressed about different things. And the thing I would just encourage them is, life might be really hard, It
Yeah.
might be really hard given because of past decisions or current life circumstances. It's only in the last 80, 100 years that a easy-ish successful, quote unquote, successful financial life has even been like a thought. It's never been pre that. It's never, for the average person, it's never been like, yeah, and I think I'm going to retire as early as I can, and I'm going to financially be really stable, and I'm going to own a house and all these other things. And that's never been a common conversation. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try. That's not a good thing, but just that like you were saying about contentment and just trusting God and being like, your life might be really hard in this arena of life, but to be a good steward means to trust that what he's given you is what he's given you, and he wants you to be faithful with that, whether much or little. And you're, again, told at the end of your life, good and faithful servant, not good and successful servant.
Yeah.
And so it's like, to be faithful with it. If you end up broke, even in debt at the end of your life, but you were faithful with what you were given, that's what matters.
Right.
And we have eternity ahead of us. Like, it will be okay.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm curious, you're retiring soon.
Yes.
Very soon. What will that look like for you in terms of stewarding your finances? Because it's going to look different.
It will look different. The first thing is I probably will unset the alarm in the morning.
You're not one of those retirees who's going to be like, I'm going to be getting up even earlier and like I got my life to live.
Probably not earlier. Probably not. But I can't wait to focus on other things.
Yeah.
And with my hope being, like I've heard other retirees say, I don't know how I had time to work because I'm going to spend time with my parents. I'm going to spend time with my grandkids and my kids. I like to travel, so maybe we'll do some more mission trips.
Yeah.
Lots of those things.
Well, it's like what we talked earlier about, a lot of stewardship. You said God owns everything, money, time, and he's given us these things to steward over. It's just cool to look where instead of focusing on work, which is it's to earn and to provide, now you're seeing, well, I've set myself up, I can actually focus on a different thing. And so God's giving you more time that you'll have to steward over.
Well,
I was going to say is
that
it's not like, oh, you have more time so you can just be hedonistic about it. It's like, oh, you have more time and accomplish more for the kingdom of God, or like just be like, what does he have for me? You listed like spending more time with certain family members who might need to, receive love and things like that. You talked about going on mission trips. You talked about different things where it's like, like you said, you have more time, which isn't just like, oh, I have more for me now. It's like, oh, I have more time that God desires me to steward. How does he desire me to steward that?
Right. And of course, time is not a financial asset, but it's an asset just the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would say, let's just say it's one of those things where some people don't really get to retire. Right. And, when we are, like God provides, and every one of us has a different life, but if we're, stewarding well over what he's provided, then we're giving ourselves an opportunity to steward over something else later on down the road. Because I'm thinking about myself, if I'm wise with how I steward over my finances, then I would look forward to not having to work to provide and setting myself up in a way that, we can live in retirement and spend that time elsewhere. But it's just to be cautious over if I never budgeted and I just spent everything that came in. I never was focused on retirement or investment in anything. I'd have to keep going and going. And it's, I don't know. I just think about investment and I think about the talents, the story, Matthew 25. I only know that because
you typed it today.
I typed it in today on the computer. But it's true. It's, not only are we to be good stewards of our money and figuring out where it's going and having a safety net, so to speak, in the bank, should we be investing? And what kinds of things should we be investing in? I don't know if that's something you do.
I think that the scriptures talk about a wise man having a plan. So I think investments of one kind or another, are a good thing. I wanted to jump to something else,
Sure.
if I can,
Yeah.
because I wanted to make sure I get this in, because otherwise I'll be in trouble at home. But I think it's really important, however you steward, that you teach your children, so they don't come to a podcast and have to talk to somebody else about what they should have done or something like that.
You don't want them to be the wayward example. It's like
and this is not so much look at the way we did this, because I think we could have done it better, but we tried to train our kids about tithing, for instance, and tithing is a way that you honor God.
Yeah.
So it's a worship thing. We turned it a little bit more with our kids into it was much more a legalistic thing. I wanted to so they understood about the portion, the tenth, and so our kids would earn money and we'd give them money, and then we'd sit down and we made them. Well, we're terrible parents. We made them save half of it.
Wow.
And 10% of it was to go to church and give to God. And we did that, but sometimes it was just, it wasn't very much. And so we'd put it in a cup.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of razzing already from you guys about this, but this cup is the one that we use.
Oh, nice.
That's the cup.
And it just happened to be a cup that we had. The thought about it, though, was he's a grouch. And God is not a grouch, so the money for God should never have gone into this cup in the first place. And it should have been much more of a personal choice based on the learning for the kids.
Yeah.
But anyways, I had to pull him out.
That's awesome.
It is a hard one trying to determine when to start teaching that to your kids. We opted to start giving them allowance every other week, our two boys. And we'll do Annie and Esther eventually when they're older. But it was hard because we were like, whenever we give it to them, we remind them this is not payment for chores you do. This is not this is part of being in our family, is that you do chores because you're part of our family, you help out because you're part of our family, but you also receive this allowance because you're part of our family. And part of our family means us teaching you how to handle money and things like that, and that's why you receive this. And so we make sure they know it's not connected to these other things, because we don't want it to become this weird earning thing.
Uh-oh, Bill.
Oh no!
Get the
to
phone
answer
calls.
it, during class. We also have them save 10%, and we have them save 10%. So and we always tell them it's at least this much. And with the tithing, we explain to them that it's that this is something God tells us to do, but it's also something to remind ourselves that this money is not ours, and that we should have an open hand with things that God gives us is ultimately His. And He asked that we give at least 10% back to Him as a way to help remind ourselves that this is not ours. It's for more than just that, but that's what we're working with right now. And then what we try to do in addition to that, because that is a hard thing where you don't want to become this legalistic thing, is that the way we try to help with that is throughout the year we'll give additionally to different needs and things like that, and we'll ask the boys if they want to participate. And if they want to participate, it has to come out of their spending money, not their saving, not their giving. And sometimes they give, a lot, considering how much they have. Sometimes they give nothing. But it's always this conversation of this needs to be a choice. This needs to be something you want to do if you do it. So we try to balance those two things. But it is really hard because ultimately you want their heart. You don't care at all about their 10% of their... their dollar.
God loves a cheerful giver, one who purposes in their heart to give.
Yeah. I love that example. I would say what I've learned here and what I've heard here is it really is, it's about the heart. And when it comes down to it, it's understanding the truth that this money that God has blessed us with, this time, this resource, whatever it is, it's not ours. We're stewarding over it. And there's a responsibility to that. Absolutely.
Sure.
And we're to look and be intentional about where do you want this money? And it is separating ourselves from this money. And I think that's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But it's God's allowing us to, he's never going to give us anything that's going to cause us to, turn away and go that way. He's always giving us just everything that we need and nothing more, nothing less. And I just think that's really special because when it comes down to, what I make, what I provide for my family and just looking at our budget, it is questioning, okay, is this appropriate? Does this fit into a life that is lived towards him, or is this appropriate towards a life that lives for me?
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to be the challenge because, we all have different lives, and some of us will make more than others our whole life. Who knows? But it's understanding that what we have is what God has given us to steward over, and all we can do, and this is my encouragement to the young person, is do the best that you can, and that's really all that God really cares about, is do the best you can with the money I've given you, with the knowledge that you have, and pursuing him over everything else.
Yeah. Well, and reaching out to others who maybe have more knowledge than you and can help.
Exactly. And I think that's part of doing the best you can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
as part of growth. Yeah.
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 Bill?
Reaching out to soon-to-be retired folk who, will have more time to serve in such capacities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we won't give out your phone number on the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, we're going to probably try to go to the marathon more often.
Nice.
Well, it's not recorded, so you're kind of obligated now.
Yeah.
Well, that's the plan as it is right now.
Awesome.
So, we're already looking at doing some other things.
Cool.
That's great. Bill, thank you so much for coming on and helping us understand stewarding over finances.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. Next week, we're talking about stewarding opportunities. Interesting. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, God bless.